Well, good morning, you sexy mother hubbards. Let's just jump straight in, shall we? With all the enthusiasm of a cat on a diving board. It's time! It's time for an alternative paper review.
The Boojess Bits of the Week, Monday.
The Telegraph are worried that the majority of private schools will probably raise their fees if or when Labour bring in VAT. Now look, just for the people at the back who haven't tuned into the podcast, who haven't heard me say this stuff before, I'll go through it again quickly. If you can't afford an extra £350 a month versus the 15 grand a year you're probably paying on fees already, here's what you do. You go up to the headmaster's office, you knock on the door, and you say, please, oh please, can my son stay here for free? Because they're charities, aren't they? These private schools, they're just charities. The second option you have, if you can't afford an extra £350 a month, guys, I'll give you the same advice that Rishi Sunak gave me when my mortgage doubled. Ready? Hold your nerve. Finally, can we stop pretending that it's unfair putting VAT on private school fees? If you're paying for the education of your son or daughter to lift them out of comprehensive like normal state school education, that is a luxury premium product and is absolutely within scope of a value-added tax. And lastly, if you're going to rant about what is or is not fair, like if you're going to grandstand about something, please, for God's sake, don't pretend that adding VAT onto private school fees is somehow unfair, when the thing that you're paying for is privilege. You sound ridiculous.
Tuesday.
Meanwhile, over in The Guardian, Israel isolated after UN Security Council demands a Gaza ceasefire. Which, look, I'm supportive of this. I think it's the right thing to do. It's very confusing that they haven't demanded this up until now. Or maybe they did, but nobody listened. I'm not sure. Like, why is this happening now? Or do they have a number, a sort of threshold that they're willing to accept the number of dead civilians up until it hits it? You know, somebody in a UN drone thing is counting the number of body plots that they're burying. Finally, it hits 50,000. And they're like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, right, we've hit it, guys. We've hit it. Now, it's unacceptable. Now, we have to do something. Before, when it was 49,999, before it was just, we gave it a 12A rating then, yeah. I mean, here's my question for you guys. How long do you think it's going to be until somebody calls the UN Security Council anti-Semitic? I mean, like, I'm not laughing at the conflict and the horrors that we're seeing, but it's ridiculous. Like, the geopolitical era that we're living in, and indeed the domestic political period that we're living in, where you cannot criticize the Israeli state, Israel as a military entity, without being boxed up and dismissed as though you are personally anti-Semitic. Like, you could literally be like, guys, I don't know if I'm totally on board with this whole, massacring huge groups of people based largely on their ethnic identity. And somebody will jump straight in your comments like, starting to sound a bit Hitlery there, Aid. Like, did you even hear what I said? Yeah. Go on then. Say it back to me. Repeat back to me what I said. All right. Blah, 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 blah. I'm a fucking idiot. Well, yeah, that's fair enough, I suppose. To the Mail today. Clapham chemical attacker asylum fiasco. It says judge doubted his account. He failed questions on Christianity and was a convicted sex offender, but Afghan was still allowed to stay as a convert. Which, look, you know how whenever there's an Islamist terror event, the majority of these attacks are always done by recent converts to Islam. So there's always that narrative weaved like, well, who radicalized them? Who exposed them to this kind of thinking? You know, you'll get news reports like Abu Muhammad Akhtar al-Shabaab, previously known as John Stevens, that he was exposed to this way of thinking. Anyway, we think he died in the explosion. Like, I want to see the Mail, the Express, the Telegraph, the mediums of tedium, right? I want to see them come out with the same stuff now for this guy. Like, oh, he seemed like a normal guy back in Kabul, but then he got involved in this Christianity stuff, and look what happened. Should we go in on Lawrence Fox first? So, Lawrence Fox, well, he has taken to Twitter. Once again, he says, this is what a very wealthy woman is asking a court for me to pay to her tomorrow. And he says, no men have this platform. It is the last bit of everything I saved. I paid £16,000 to see my boys last month. 16 grand, guys. That is a lot. I mean, here's what I hope is true, right, with this. I hope that even his sons hate him. I hope that even his kids see him on the news and they follow him on X and they're like, oh no, Dad, rein it in. And then when he's like, can I see you next weekend? Can I see you like on the 24th or whatever? They're like, oh, they look at each other. They're like, do you like Dad? No. Do you? No, me either. How can we square this a little bit? How do we make money? If Dad wants to see us, Mum, if Dad wants to see us, 8 grand each. Yeah. Tell him to make the drop. Or he's never going to see his kids again.
Prince Andrew's a nonce-burger.
Thursday,
Could Rishi gamble on a summer election? I mean, is this really a gamble? Is it? Like, a gamble is when you roll the dice, when you put it all on 28 red, but you have an outside chance that you might walk away with a win. Like, I don't want to be complacent, but this election incoming is pretty much nailed down now. So this is not a gamble in any real sense of the word. Because if the polls are to be believed, gambling on, a summer election or a spring election or a winter election or whatever, that is basically like gambling on a parachuteless base jump based on whether it's a sunny day or a slightly windy one. It's like, oh, guys, I reckon if it's 7 degrees and 2 miles an hour westward, I think I'm feeling lucky.
Friday, motherfuckers.
Anyway, Lee Anderson has been bubbling up, as I say, on my feed again. Bubbling up like a literal cauldron of Thames water waste. Just bubbling away there. This time he's raging against... What's he raging against this week? What's his vibe? He's raging against Ramadan lights down Oxford Street. That's his... Of all the things to be upset about. I wanted to talk about this tonight. And specifically this new reform lean to him. But since he ran away to reform, or rather since reform, Richard Tice, the, multi-millionaire guy, since Richard Tice purchased Lee Anderson, he has a new catchphrase, doesn't he? He has a new vibe to him. And it's not just, Islamophobia over here, the trans debate and culture war stuff over there. Now it's very specific. Now it's a bit more reformy. It's I want my country back. And anyway, there's a new angle to this now, right? So it's, I want my country back from Bleached Frankenstein. And the new angle, the new lean, or the depth to it that we're now reaching, is this tie to Christianity. He says, during the most important time of the Christian calendar, we get this. Anyone else want their country back? He says. The other one was like, I thought this was supposed to be a Christian country. And Nigel Farage just said that shit. Which is now, now we're into the realm of levels deep stupidity. We are not statistically a Christian country anymore. Okay? That is just a self-evident fact. Statistical, mathematical. Lee Anderson is all about Christianity now. And he thought this was a Christian country, which is, that whole thing is presumably, that is him, right, fresh from attending church, right, and he's just been listening to the teachings of Christ. And he's been thinking to himself, listening to the priest, listening to the Psalms, listening to the parables or whatever. And he's come out of there and he's like, yeah, hang on. We shouldn't be hanging Ramadan lights up on Oxford Street, should we? That's not... No, I tell you what we should be doing as a Christian nation. We should be feeding the hungry, shouldn't we? We should be comforting or healing the sick. So serious does he take everything that he's taking away from the Bible. I'm sure that's just on the tip of his tongue. You start with taking down the Ramadan lights, day 1. Day 2, start feeding the hungry. I mean, I really would like it, right? When you see a Jacob Rees-Mogg or a Lee Anderson, right, come out with this stuff, when they say stuff like, I thought this was a Christian country, I would love to see like an interviewer or somebody, you know, clap back to them or whatever, to just go like, yeah, me too. I thought it was a Christian country too. So why don't we like join forces and we'll whip out some Old Testament shit where we stone chancing liars to death for taking advantage of the poor. How do you feel about that, Lee? Stoning chancers to death for exploiting the poor and the hungry and the sick. Oh, well, I'm agnostic now. You know how fickle he can be. He's going to be like that. It's the same thing with like political parties. He's going to be the same with religions. Lee Anderson would turn Muslim if they offered him £100,000 on the QT. I reckon